It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. As Western nations agree to spend more on defence, Donald Trump is quizzed by Sky News about claims that he is NATO's parent figure.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay?
The UK promised to spend more than 4% of GDP on defence within 2 years and will order new fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons. Also tonight, the CIA backs Donald Trump's claims that US airstrikes did severely damage Iran's nuclear sites.
Is anybody here who believes in God? Trump! Are there gods here? Trump!
A man is convicted of murdering a schoolboy during a sword rampage in northeast London. Ministers insist that planned welfare cuts will go to a Commons vote despite a growing Labour rebellion. And Gareth Southgate receives his knighthood and talks about life after football.
I'm enjoying a different pace of life, and so I'm very content.
Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through until midnight. Good evening. NATO leaders have agreed to raise defence spending to 5% of GDP by 2035, in a move described by Donald Trump as a monumental win for Western civilization. At the NATO summit at The Hague, the US president took credit for the spending boost and was quizzed by Sky News over suggestions that he has become the organisation's daddy. He spoke to our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes, who has tonight's first report.
That's the picture we want. Yeah.
A brush with Dutch royalty and plenty of smiles. This is a NATO summit of 32 allies, but really, it's all about one man, Donald Trump, or Daddy. The NATO chief cast him as a father figure while he was talking about Israel's war with Iran.
And Daddy has to sometimes use strong language to
You have
get
to use
stuff.
strong language. Every once in a while, you have to use a certain word.
The Middle East is clearly on his mind. But the meeting here in The Hague is about European security. In particular, a need for Europe and Canada to show Donald Trump they're relying less on the US to protect them and doing more to defend themselves. It's why they agreed to a new target to spend 5% of GDP on defence and security. The pledge was then framed as a big win for Mr. Trump that only he could have secured.
Is this the way that you feel that you have to act when doing business with the US president, through flattery and praise? Isn't it a bit demeaning, and doesn't it make you look weak?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a bit of a question of taste. But I think he's a good friend. And when he is doing stuff which is forcing us to, for example, when it comes to making more investments, doesn't he deserve some praise?
Before the summit, the US president sounded unsure about the need to defend his allies. By the end, though, their charm offensive appeared to have worked.
Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Do you regard your NATO allies, though, as kind of like children, and they're obviously listening to you and they're spending more, and you're obviously appreciative of that, but do you hope that actually they're going to be able to defend themselves, defend Europe on their own?
I think they need help a little bit at the beginning, and I think they'll be able to, and I think they're going to remember this day. And this is a big day for NATO.
Do you think they can do it without you, though, in the future? Can they do it without
Well, ask Mark.
States?
I mean, you have to ask Mark, okay?
Mark Rutte would doubtless say no.
Thank you very much, dear Mark.
Also needing US support is Ukraine. The The Ukrainian president met with European allies on the sidelines of the summit. He spoke with Mr. Trump too. But securing a ceasefire to end Russia's war in Ukraine is something that has so far even eluded the daddy. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, The Hague.
At the NATO summit, Sir Keir Starmer confirmed that the UK will increase defence spending to 4% of GDP within 2 years. The Prime Minister also announced a major upgrade of the UK's nuclear capabilities. More than £1 billion will be spent on a squadron of new fighter jets that are capable of carrying nuclear missiles. The UK will buy 12 F-35s, which are multi-role stealth combat jets, specifically the A variant. It already flies the B variant of the jet. Now, those jets the UK is buying are capable of carrying nuclear weapons. They can be armed with American-made B-61 tactical nuclear bombs. This increase in the UK's nuclear capacity will be in addition to the existing nuclear deterrent. The country currently relies on Trident, a strategic nuclear weapon that's carried on Vanguard-class submarines. Trident is what makes the UK one of 3 NATO members with a nuclear capability. The others are the United States and France. The government's calling this move the biggest strengthening of the UK's nuclear posture in a generation. Well, let's go live now to The Hague and our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes. Deborah, you asked Donald about being the daddy, but it seems like he whipped the kids into shape there today.
Well, it was all about Donald Trump, and the allies know that they have to keep America on side. You heard him say he didn't think that allies, even with their increased defence spending, would be able to defend Europe on their own, and that really is a guarantee that NATO allies wanted to have locked in. Donald Trump questioned whether his country would come to defend allies in a crisis before he arrived at this summit, but he left very much warmed and appreciative of all this, these warm words, this praise, this flattery that's been heaped on him by his allies and in particular the NATO Secretary-General. But there is a real risk of this whole thing unravelling when you actually look at the speed at which the allies are actually going to be ramping up their defence spending. And actually, let's just look at the UK, our country. You talked about that 4% figure of GDP that the UK is saying they're going to be spending on defence. It is just smoke and mirrors at the moment, frankly, because that number is about 2.6% of defence spending by 2027, which is a number that has been talked about since the beginning of the year. And despite all the noise about ramping up money to deter threats and please Donald Trump, it's not going to happen until way back in the 2030s. And the Baltic states and Poland in particular are saying the NATO allies need to go much faster because they believe Vladimir Putin may seek to test the alliance much sooner than that. And frankly, why would he wait for them to be ready?
Deborah, in The Hague, thank you very much indeed. Well, also at the NATO summit, President Trump insisted that US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities did result in a serious setback to any ambitions Tehran may have in building a nuclear weapon. And that's despite leaked reports in the US suggesting that the bombing caused only minor damage. This evening, the CIA has said there is credible intelligence that Iran's nuclear program was severely damaged by the attack. Sky's David Blevins reports now from Washington, D.C.
The B-2 bombers returned, leaving questions hanging in the air. But the success of their strikes isn't one of them, according to the president, who's confirmed fresh talks with Iran.
We're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. We want no nuclear, but we destroyed the nuclear. In other words, it's destroyed. I said, Iran will not have nuclear. Well, we blew it up. It's blown up to kingdom come.
The administration is closely scrutinising these images, before and after shots from Fordo and Iran's other nuclear facilities. Mission accomplished, says the White House. Iran's nuclear ambitions only set back by months, says a leaked report from the Pentagon.
If you want to make an assessment of what happened at Fordo, you better get a big shovel and go really deep, because Iran's nuclear program is obliterated. And somebody somewhere is trying to leak something to say, oh, with low confidence, we think maybe it's moderate. Those that dropped the bombs precisely in the right place, know exactly what happened when that exploded. And you know who else knows? Iran.
What do they think in the corridors of Congress? It depends who you ask.
I flew 39 combat missions in the first Gulf War.
Senator Mark Kelly has seen the report. What do you think when President Trump uses the term obliterated?
Well, he's just saying that because he wants that to be the narrative. He said it the night of the strike without any information, without even satellite imagery, and certainly without any information about what happened underneath 200 feet of rock and granite and dirt. The likelihood of something underground like that being obliterated is incredibly low.
The president has said there will be talks between the US and Iran.
Great.
That there is a ceasefire. What do you expect those talks to deliver?
I mean, ultimately, we would want to deliver something like the plan that Donald Trump tore up in 2018. That should be his goal.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The success of a military operation has become a battle of political messaging, and that's going to last longer than a 12-day war, because the truth lies buried, quite literally, deep underground. It's been an uphill struggle, from airstrikes to a fragile ceasefire to more talks with Iran. There's always unfinished business when you're the President of the United States. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Let's bring in Sky's US correspondent Mark Stone, who's in Washington, D.C. Evening to you, Mark. We hear that Donald Trump was apoplectic about this leak suggesting the Iran bombing was not a success, describing those who did it as scum and disgusting. But the CIA has rode to his defence.
They have. I mean, this has caused an almighty storm. You could see how angry the defense secretary was there. Donald Trump, too. He's been lashing out at the individual reporters who were given the leaks from the Pentagon. And he's generally framing this as somehow these journalists being unpatriotic. He's kind of crossing the wires and suggesting that they're being unpatriotic. They're blaming the pilots. I mean, no one's doing that, to be clear. What people are doing is taking these leaked reports and then publishing them. And these leaked reports do suggest that it might not have been quite an obliteration as Donald Trump had claimed. Nevertheless, I think it is the case, and we've done a lot of work over this over the past couple of days, that both sides are wrong. It's wrong for Donald Trump, as Mark Kelly said in David's report there, to come to such a swift conclusion. It will take time. It's also wrong to assume that this one leaked report is the whole picture. It is not. It was striking that Mark Kelly, who is a Democratic senator in David's report there, he has seen the intelligence, remember. He can't tell us what it says because he is bound by confidentiality rules. It's against, he's not able to do it. But he did say it's unlikely that they would have been obliterated. Now, into this has come the director of the CIA with a very rare public statement. He's Trump appointed, of course, but his statement is really interesting. It says the CIA can confirm that a body of credible intelligence indicates Iran's nuclear program has been severely damaged by the recent targeted strikes. These include new intelligence from a historically reliable and accurate source method that several key Iranian nuclear facilities were destroyed and would have to be rebuilt over the course of years. This is an attempt to draw a line under it, effectively say to people, look, what was leaked is not the full picture. We've got the full picture. We're still managing to build on that picture, and we'll give you more in time. So it is a big row, and I imagine it will go on for some time.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. Israel and Iran may have agreed a ceasefire yesterday, but Israel's war in Gaza is very much continuing. At least 33 people are reported by Gazan health officials to have been killed in the last 24 hours. Many of them were people queuing for aid. An Israeli official said that 7 soldiers were killed yesterday when their armoured vehicle was hit by an explosive. From Jerusalem, Tom Cheshire has more.
Every day in the very early morning, thousands of Palestinians make this journey. They do so knowing they are walking into what a UN official has described as a death trap. But they are desperate for food, so they risk it.
I'm really thanking God I managed to get this bag. I have to feed 15 people. We've been trying for 3 months. Thank God I made it. I went back and forth to that area 10 times, near the tanks, near the Israelis, through intense gunfire. Thank God.
Many were not so lucky this morning. The wounded were taken to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. The dead were laid out on the floor. Hundreds of people have been killed trying to get food at distribution points, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. The aid stations are operated by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, a private organisation backed by Israel and now funded directly by the US too. The IDF did not respond to our questions on this latest incident, but told Sky News the Ministry of Health in Gaza is controlled and directed by Hamas and is therefore subject to its agenda. In consequence, as has been proved and demonstrated repeatedly, the data of the ministry is replete with inconsistencies and false determinations. The spectacular aerial conflict between Israel and Iran may have ended. But the relentless ground-level grind of the Gaza war has continued all the while. This was yesterday in Jallah street camp in the middle of the region. The IDF also announced the death of 7 soldiers killed by an explosive device. The end of the Iran war means Israel is now focusing more military resources on Gaza, but it also means there may be a new path to peace, as Donald Trump suggested at today's NATO summit. In the dark pre-dawn, on empty stomachs and aching feet, it is death that is close by. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Here, a man has been found guilty of murdering a 14-year-old with a samurai sword in northeast London last April. Daniel Angerin was on his way to school in Hainault when he was killed by Marcus Monzo, who also attacked others in a violent rampage. A warning, this piece from our crime correspondent Martin Brunt contains details of the attack, which you may find distressing.
He's just a kitten. That's why. Wow.
He could barely contain his excitement. This was Marcus Monzo, martial arts enthusiast, unwrapping a new purchase.
Freaking sexy. Ah.
In his hands, the samurai sword became more than a ceremonial symbol.
Ah.
3 weeks later, the sword was hidden in his van as he set off on a 20-minute rampage of violence. The prosecution said Monzo intended to kill a number of people. The trigger? A self-induced drug psychosis from smoking cannabis. First, he mowed down a pedestrian, Donato Iwule. Then he hit him with a sword. After the jury's verdict, Mr. Iwule relived the attack.
He's trying to swing, so I kind of moved back, and this way he caught me right in my neck. So when he caught me straight away, I panicked for, a couple of seconds. And I remember what my cousin used to tell me, because he's a doctor as well. And I said, Donato, I know your job, so if anything happened, this is what you need to do. And that kicked in my brain straight away. And I used my thumb, and I pushed my nerve. My major nerve was basically out. I put it right deep inside my side of the throat, and I put pressure.
It was Daniel Angerin's terrible luck to be walking to school nearby. He was 14. Monzo crept up on the boy and raised his sword, virtually beheading him.
He just killed that boy.
When paramedics arrived, Monzo turned his violence on them.
Like close, more units, more units!
And he tried to stop police helping the boy too.
Is anybody here who believes in God? Drop it! Are there gods here? Drop! Are there gods or gods? Drop it! Drop it!
Outside court, police welcomed the guilty verdicts.
First in our thoughts today is Daniel Angerin, a talented, gentle and bright young man, a much-loved son and brother, brutally murdered simply walking to school. What should have been the start of a normal day at the beginning of a promising life.
When an officer chased Monzo away, he stopped and attacked her too, with near-fatal injuries.
Police officer stopped! Police officer stopped! Stop!
Monzo then broke into a house and attacked a couple who'd been asleep in bed. He stopped and fled only when their young daughter cried out. When Monzo ran out, more police were waiting for him. He attacked another officer with a sword. Monzo was cornered briefly, then escaped again. He was spotted on a roof.
He's going in people's gardens, man. Lock your doors! Lock your doors!
Finally, he was tasered and arrested. He told police he'd woken up that day fearing the end of the world. He claimed he had many personalities, including professional assassin.
The CPS maintained throughout that Marcus Arduini Monzo's mental state was driven by his own cannabis misuse, which meant that he was fully responsible for the devastation he caused last year. The jury, by their unequivocal verdicts, have accepted the prosecution case.
During the trial, Monzo said he'd had no intention of killing anyone, and he remembered nothing of the attacks. But he did recall killing and skinning his cat before he set off. Voices had told him to get rid of the pet. Martin Brunt, Sky News, at the Old Bailey.
The Prime Minister is insisting that a Commons vote on his plans to cut welfare benefits will go ahead despite a growing rebellion. More than 130 MPs, including 120 on Labour's own benches, are supporting a bid to block the proposed cuts to disability and sickness-related benefits payments. Our political editor Beth Rigby asked Keir Starmer if he was concerned by the revolt.
We're committed to reforming our welfare system. It doesn't work. It traps people. And it has to be reformed. And it also has to ensure that we've got a welfare system that is fit for the future. And that is why there will be a vote and we will press ahead with the reforms.
Let's go live to Downing Street. Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue is there. Ali, evening to you. If, as the Prime Minister says, it's going ahead, this vote is going to be difficult for the government to win.
Yeah, that's right. And look, the Prime Minister also said at that NATO summit that he is very comfortable reading the room when it comes to welfare reforms. But you've got to ask, is he reading the room where about a quarter, nearly a third of MPs on his own side are willing to rebel on this flagship policy around welfare reform? This is undoubtedly a moment of acute political danger for Keir Starmer. What happens next? Well, could the government win this vote? It's become clear today from the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister they will be pushing ahead with that crunch vote on Tuesday, but it would take about 80 MPs to rebel for it to be defeated. They have, of course, got a massive majority, but as you say, we don't see any signs of that 120 plus MPs wavering. What happens if they lose the vote? Well, obviously that would be a humiliating, weakening moment for the Prime Minister. One MP has told us that a minister was trying to persuade them, told them it could, if it was defeated, end up turning into a leadership contest. I'm not saying that is going to happen, but that is a way that this is being framed, it appears, by some behind the scenes. Or could we see some concessions? Could we maybe see the government making an amendment to appease some of those rebels? That might be the direction that this is going in. We're getting some hints this evening from ministers, including Luke Pollard. Have a listen to this.
So about 30% of your party in Parliament are saying that they are unhappy with it, that they may vote against it. Angela Rayner also said tonight that discussions are ongoing about any concessions. So it does sound like you're in dialogue about perhaps making changes.
Yeah, of course we are. I mean, I think there's a concern that's very valid and real for lots of my colleagues. They're not doing this to cause trouble or to be argumentative. They're doing it because they have a genuine, heartfelt concern about some of the impacts. Now, I think the welfare reforms as being proposed, on the whole, create a huge opportunity to help people that are currently being failed by a broken system.
It does strike me that a lot of MPs, I have spoken to a few of those rebels today, they do seem to want an off-ramp. There are MPs from different parts of the Labour Party, new MPs, old MPs, but a lot of them are not the usual rebels. As one MP put it to me today, one of those rebels, the majority of us don't want this bill to fail It is the way that it was driven by the Treasury. That is a message that has been echoed by others. The way that this was driven, they think, by a desire for the Treasury to save money, not enough consultation, they say, with the people at the heart of this, people with disabilities. And of course, it is about money. The government hoped to save £5 billion a year by 2030. That is a lot of money. It's now about politics too. A Prime Minister that needs to show he is able to get his agenda through Parliament. He pledged change in the general election, needs to show he can get that through. He's not at the mercy of his own MPs, but something is going to have to give in the next few days. And from the conversations I've had, it doesn't look like that 120 plus MPs are willing to bend on this. So will we see concessions from the government?
Ali in Downing Street, thank you very much indeed. Scotland's First Minister, John Swinney, has apologised for a state-sanctioned social experiment on the travelling community that was carried out between 1940 and 1980. Known as the Tinker experiment and supported by councils and the UK government, it attempted to strip away the nomadic lifestyle of gypsy travellers by providing basic, cramped huts for people to live in. When families became too big to be housed in the huts, some had their children taken away. John Swinney's apology comes after a Scottish Government report described the practice as cultural genocide.
The most horrific part of these policies was that children were forcibly removed from their families for no other reason that they were born gypsy travellers. And as a result, the state and local authorities and religious institutions seen them as less than other young people who weren't gypsy travellers.
Progress in vaccinating children against life-threatening diseases has stalled since 2010 and even gone backwards in some countries. The global study published in The Lancet says the situation was worsened by the COVID pandemic, leaving millions of children unprotected from diseases such as measles, tuberculosis and polio. King Charles has welcomed the winners of the King's Trust Awards 2025 to Buckingham Palace. George and Amal Clooney were among the guests at the ceremony, joined by Dame Joanna Lumley and other supporters of the charity. The event marked the 10th anniversary of the King's Trust International and celebrated young people who've turned their lives around with the Trust's support, overcoming issues like mental health struggles, school exclusion and long-term unemployment. The former England men's manager Gareth Southgate received a knighthood for services to football at Windsor Castle today. Afterwards, he spoke to Sky's Garrett Hughes about receiving the honour, leading England to the finals of the Euros in 2020 and 2024, and about what he plans to do next.
An amazing privilege, and I have to say I was more emotional than I thought I would be, but amazing experience for my whole family today.
Sir Gareth Southgate, for services to Association Football.
The lovely thing is that you get to meet so many people who've done incredible things for our country, so to meet other award winners was very, very special. The Prince has been an incredible supporter of the England team anyway, so we've been fortunate to share some amazing moments and some disappointments where he's come and spoke brilliantly to the team, so it was great to see him again.
What's the thing that's given you maybe time to look back on things with England, the most satisfaction?
Yeah, I mean, I think results, firstly. Not quite where we wanted to get to at the very end, but I think still an incredibly consistent period of English football. And yeah, the journey that we went on, fans and team, working with a very special group of players, very special group of staff. They're the emotional things that you look back on. Of course, the games are very important, but the relationships that you build and the times that you spend together with people that are close to you are very, very special.
Highs and lows. What was the highest high? What were some of the not so great moments?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant roller coaster with England. I mean, I'll never forget walking around Wembley, having beaten Denmark in the semi-final and taken the country to a first final in over 50 years. That was, at a moment where the country had been through a difficult time with COVID, as had everybody. But so that was an amazing feeling of unifying people for the period between the semi-final and the final as well. And then the finals were low points, but nevertheless, I'm still proud of what the team did and how far we got.
What next for you?
Obviously doing some more work following on from the Dimbleby lecture with the landscape for young men in particular in this country. I do some coach mentoring. I've got a couple of business ventures that are just bubbling away. And I'm enjoying a different pace of life, and I'm very content.